The night smelled like whiskey, cheap perfume, and betrayal. I stood there, my hand gripping the cold steel of my .45, the barrel pressed firmly against the crotch of the bastard who ruined my life. His name was Jake, some gymrat prick with perfect teeth and a smug attitude that made my blood boil. "You bastard," I growled, my voice steady despite the hurricane raging inside me. "Are you ready to pay for what you did to my wife? For destroying my life? For nearly killing my daughter?" Jake didn't even flinch. He took one last drag from his cigar, exhaled the smoke in my face, and smirked. "Your wife was insanely good in bed. Your life was worthless anyway. And your daughter?" He leaned in, his voice dripping with cruelty. "She's actually mine. And only I decide what happens to her." The world stopped. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. My finger tensed on the trigger, and before I knew it, bang! The gunshot echoed in the empty parking lot, and Jake collapsed onto the pavement, clutching his leg and howling in pain. I hadn't killed him, yet, but I damn sure made him regret opening his mouth. Only after the ringing in my ears faded did I realize what I had done. And I had no regrets. 24 hours earlier, I used to believe in love. Hell, I used to believe in my wife. Maddie, was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and have every man eating out of the palm of her hand. Blonde, stunning, with a smile that could make you forget your own name. I thought I was lucky. Turns out, I was just blind. It started small. She got more distant, her phone always clutched in her hand like it held the secrets to the universe. Late nights at work, unexplained expenses, the scent of cologne that sure as hell wasn't mine. But the real gut punch? My daughter, Emily, started calling me David instead of Daddy. I should have confronted her sooner. Should have demanded the truth. But I let it slide, convincing myself I was paranoid. That is, until last night. I got home from work early. The house was too quiet, the kind of eerie silence that told you something was wrong before you even stepped through the door. And then I heard it. Muffled voices. Laughter. And the unmistakable sound of a bed frame creaking upstairs. My stomach twisted into a knot, rage boiling beneath my skin. I moved like a ghost, creeping up the stairs, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might give me away. The bedroom door was open just enough for me to see inside. And there she was. Maddie. My wife. Naked and tangled in the sheets with another man. Jake. That gymrat prick. They didn't see me at first. I stood there, frozen, watching as she threw her head back, moaning his name, the same way she used to moan mine. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms so hard I thought I'd draw blood. Then she saw me. Her eyes went wide, and for the first time in years, she looked genuinely shocked. "David," she started, scrambling to pull the sheets over herself. "Jake?" That bastard just grinned. "Hey, man. Guess you found out." I should have snapped his neck right then and there. But I wasn't thinking straight. I turned, stormed out, my world crumbling around me. Maddie chased after me, her voice full of fake panic. "Wait. David, I can explain." I stopped at the front door, spinning on my heel. "Explain?" My voice came out hoarse. "Explain what, Maddie?" "That you're a lying, cheating, manipulative." "I wasn't cheating," she blurted out. I stared at her, disbelief punching me in the gut. She actually had the audacity to lie. "You weren't," I let out a bitter laugh. "I just saw you. I heard you." "It wasn't what it looked like," she insisted, wrapping a silk robe around herself like it would somehow erase what I'd seen. I should have walked away. Should have grabbed my daughter and left. But something in me snapped. I needed the truth. I needed revenge. So I grabbed my gun, got in my truck, and went hunting. And that's how I ended up here. Standing over Jake's bleeding body, my gun still smoking. And Maddie? She was next. The bastard lay on the pavement, clutching his leg, groaning in pain. Blood pooled around his thigh, soaking into the cracks of the asphalt. His cocky smirk was gone, replaced with wide-eyed panic. I took a deep breath, steadying my hand. The gun was still warm in my grip. "You're gonna kill me?" Jake rasped, trying to crawl backward, but his leg was useless. I stepped closer, towering over him, pressing the barrel against his forehead this time. "That depends," I said, my voice steady, calm. "You're going to tell me everything. No more smirks. No more lies. Because if you do, I swear to God," I pressed the gun harder against his skull, "I'll blow your *****ing brains out." Jake swallowed hard, his bravado crumbling. Okay, he gasped, his hands trembling in the air. "What do you want to know?" "How long?" I asked. "A year. Maybe more." I felt my stomach twist. "A whole year. While I kissed my wife goodnight, while I tucked my daughter into bed, while I worked my ass off to give them a life worth living, she was sneaking around with this lowlife." "Where?" I gritted my teeth. "Your house," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Rage surged through me like wildfire. "My home. My bed. The place where my daughter slept." I pressed the gun harder, my finger twitching over the trigger. "And Emily?" I forced out the words, my throat tight. Jake looked at me, something dark and twisted flickering in his eyes. He smiled, just a little. "I already told you, man. She's mine." Everything went red. I didn't think, I reacted. The next thing I knew, my fist connected with his jaw so hard I heard something crack. His head snapped to the side, blood splattering from his mouth as he groaned in pain. "You're lying," I snarled. "Say it again. Say it one more time, and I swear to God, I won't miss next time." Jake coughed, spitting out blood onto the pavement. "Maddie told me," he gasped. "Said she had doubts. Said the timing didn't add up. I took a test, man. Emily's mine. And if you kill me, you'll never prove otherwise." My whole world tilted. The gun shook in my hands, the weight of his words crushing me. I thought I had reached my breaking point, but this was worse than anything I had imagined. I took a step back, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Jake laughed, soft, weak, but full of something sick. "Hurts, doesn't it?" he murmured. "Knowing that your whole life was a lie. I should have pulled the trigger. Should have ended him right then and there." But a new thought slammed into my brain, making my blood run cold. Maddie. She had been lying to me for a year, no, longer. What if she knew? What if she had known the whole time and never told me? What if she had been stringing me along like a fool, playing house while laughing behind my back? I turned away from Jake, shoving the gun back into my waistband. He wasn't worth it. Not yet. There was only one person who had the answers I needed. I got in my truck, tires screeching against the pavement as I sped off, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would explode. The house was dark when I pulled up, but I knew she was inside. Hiding. Probably rehearsing whatever excuse she thought would get her out of this. I slammed the door open so hard it nearly broke off the hinges. "Maddie!" I roared. For a second, there was silence. Then, footsteps. Soft, hesitant. And then she appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in that silk robe like she had been waiting for me. Her eyes widened at the sight of me, then flickered to the gun at my hip. You shot him," she breathed. I took the stairs 2 at a time, closing the distance between us before she could run. I grabbed her wrist, yanking her close. "Tell me the truth," I hissed. "Emily. Is she mine?" Maddie's lips parted, her breath hitching. And then she smirked. Not a nervous, guilty smile. Not a look of regret. AF ****ing smirk. "Does it really matter?" she whispered. I saw red. My hand shot out, grabbing her by the throat, slamming her against the wall. "Say it," I growled, my fingers tightening. "Say the words." She gasped, but her smirk never faded. "You were never enough for me," she whispered. "You were always so pathetic. So desperate to believe I loved you. But deep down, you knew, didn't you? That I was screwing him the whole time. That Emily," she let out a breathy laugh, "was never yours." I let go so fast she nearly fell. She straightened, rubbing her neck, still smiling like she had won. Like this was a game to her. I stepped back, hands shaking, mind reeling. Then I turned and walked away. Because if I didn't, I was going to kill her. And I wasn't ready to go to prison just yet. I walked out of the house, my pulse hammering in my skull, my vision tunneling. The air outside was thick, humid, suffocating. My hands trembled as I yanked my truck door open and slid inside, gripping the wheel so hard I thought it would snap. My mind kept replaying her words. Does it really matter? The smirk. The amusement in her voice. Like she was proud of it. Like it was a joke, and I was the punchline. I needed air. I needed to think. I didn't even realize I was driving until I looked up and saw the neon sign of a 24-hour diner flashing in the darkness. My stomach churned, but I pulled into the lot anyway, the tires crunching against gravel. I didn't know why I was here. Maybe I needed to sit down before I collapsed. Maybe I needed to be somewhere that wasn't my goddamn house. I walked inside, the bell over the door jingling as I stepped in. The place was nearly empty. A waitress, a couple of truckers in the corner, and a guy at the counter nursing a black coffee. I slid into a booth, my hands still shaking as I ran them through my hair. Bad night? I looked up. The waitress was standing there, a notepad in one hand, a pot of coffee in the other. She was maybe mid-40s, dark circles under her eyes, her uniform slightly wrinkled. She had that tired, knowing look people get when they've seen too much. I exhaled sharply. "You have no idea." She nodded like she'd heard that 1,000 times before. "Want coffee? Stronger." She smirked, set the pot down, and reached into her apron. Pulled out a silver flask and poured a splash of something into the cup before sliding it across the table. On the house. I didn't ask questions. I just took a sip and let the burn spread through my chest. "Want to talk about it?" she asked. I let out a laugh, hollow and bitter. "You wouldn't believe me if I did. Try me." So I did. I told her everything. Not just about tonight. About Maddie. About the little things, the late nights, the secret phone calls, the way she used to look at me like I was everything and then, one day, like I was nothing. I told her about Jake. About the way he laughed in my face, about the gun, the blood, the way the truth had ripped through me like a bullet. And Emily. My daughter. Or maybe not. When I finished, she whistled low. "Damn," she muttered. "That's a whole lot of ugly." "Yeah," I rasped. She leaned against the booth, crossing her arms. "So, what now?" That was the question, wasn't it? I had two choices. 1, walk away. File for divorce, get a lawyer, let the courts decide what happened next. Be the bigger man. Or 2, make sure neither of them ever hurt anyone again. I took another sip of my drink. Haven't decided yet. She studied me for a long moment, then sighed. Well, whatever you do, just make sure it's worth it. She walked off before I could ask what she meant. I sat there, staring into the dark liquid in my cup, my reflection warped and twisted. My hands were steady now. The shaking was gone. The rage had settled into something colder, something more dangerous. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen. Maddie had sent me a message. Maddie, you'll regret walking away. You always do. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Then another message popped up. Unknown number, meet me at the docks. 1 hour. I have proof. I frowned. Proof? Of what? I hesitated, then typed back. Me, who is this? No response. I glanced at the clock on the diner wall. 2:37 a.m. I had nothing to lose. I threw some cash on the table and walked out, the night air hitting me like a slap. The drive to the docks was a blur, my mind racing. My gut told me this was a bad idea, but I didn't care. If someone had proof, real proof, I needed to see it. The docks were empty when I arrived, the water black and still. A single streetlight flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the pavement. I killed the engine, stepping out, scanning the area. Then I saw him. Jake. Standing there like he'd been waiting for me. He was bandaged up, his legs stiff, but the smirk was back. And he wasn't alone. Maddie stood beside him. And next to her, Emily. My heart stopped. Emily looked confused, sleepy. Like she'd been woken up and dragged here without knowing why. She clutched Maddie's hand, yawning, rubbing her eyes. What the hell is this? I demanded, my voice sharp. Maddie grinned. You didn't think I'd let you just walk away, did you? Jake chuckled. We had a little talk after you left, and Maddie had a great idea. I clenched my fists. Let my daughter go. Maddie's expression darkened. She's not your daughter. The words hit me harder than any bullet. Jake pulled something from his pocket. A folded piece of paper. He tossed it at my feet. I hesitated, then bent down, unfolding it with numb fingers. A paternity test. And there it was. The confirmation. Emily wasn't mine. The world spun. See, Maddie purred. You don't have anything left. No wife. No kid. No family. So why don't you do us both a favor and disappear? Jake took a step closer. Or, we could make you disappear. I looked at them. At the woman I had loved. At the man who had taken everything from me. And at the little girl who, despite it all, still called me daddy. My fingers twitched. I had a gun. I had nothing to lose. And I had a choice to make. Jake smirked like he had already won. Maddie crossed her arms, tilting her head, waiting for me to break. Emily yawned again, sleepy, rubbing her eyes. She had no idea what was happening. No idea that the two people standing beside her were monsters. My fingers twitched toward the gun at my waist, but I forced myself to stop. Not yet. I swallowed hard, my voice calm, steady. You really think this changes anything? Jake chuckled. Buddy, it changes everything. Maddie stepped forward, her eyes gleaming. You always were a coward, weren't you? Couldn't even pull the trigger when you had the chance. She smirked. You know, I was hoping you'd shoot him. That way, I could watch you rot in prison while I raised his daughter. The rage bubbled up again, but I kept it locked down. I needed to think. I needed to be smart. Jake was already injured, but Maddie, she was as dangerous as ever. And Emily was standing right there. I took a slow step forward, raising my hands. Let her go. Jake shook his head, amused. Not how this works. See, Maddie and we've got plans. And you? You're in the way. I glanced at Emily. You really want to do this in front of her? Maddie's expression flickered for a second. Just a second. And it was enough. I moved. Fast. My hand shot to my gun, and I pulled it free in one smooth motion. Jake's eyes widened as I slammed the butt of it into his temple, dropping him like a sack of bricks. Maddie shrieked, grabbing Emily and yanking her back. I aimed the gun at Maddie. Let her go. She laughed. Actually laughed. Or what? You gonna shoot me? You don't have the guts. I flicked the safety off. She hesitated. You're right, I said. I should have pulled the trigger on him when I had the chance. But I won't make that mistake twice. Maddie's grip on Emily tightened. She's not yours. You have no right. Maybe not, I cut her off. But I raised her. I was the one who rocked her to sleep when she cried. I was the one who held her hand when she was scared. And whether she's mine by blood or not, she's my daughter. Not yours. Not his. Mine. Emily looked up at me, blinking. Daddy? That was it. That was all I needed. I pulled the trigger. The bullet whizzed past Maddie's ear, shattering the street lamp behind her. She screamed, stumbling back, letting go of Emily just enough time for me to grab her. I scooped Emily into my arms and ran. Maddie shrieked behind me. You think this is over? Jake groaned somewhere on the ground, still out cold. I didn't stop. Didn't turn back. I sprinted to my truck, threw the door open, and shoved Emily inside. I jumped in, gunned the engine, and peeled out of the docks. My hands were shaking, my heart hammering. Emily was crying in the seat beside me, her little fists clutching my shirt. Daddy, what's happening? She sobbed. I gritted my teeth, swallowing the lump in my throat. It's okay, baby, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Everything's gonna be okay. But I didn't know if that was true. Because now, Maddie and Jake weren't just cheating, lying scum. Now, they were something worse. And they weren't going to stop. They weren't going to let us go. I had to end this. For good. I drove like a madman, my knuckles white against the wheel. Emily clung to my side, sobbing into my shirt, her tiny hands trembling. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other wrapped protectively around her, my heart hammering like a war drum. Maddie and Jake weren't just scumbags anymore. They were dangerous. And they weren't going to stop. The question was, where the hell could I go? My mind raced, running through every option, every possible escape. The cops? No. Maddie would twist the story, make me out to be the villain. I had already shot Jake once. And now I had taken Emily. To the world, I was the kidnapper. I needed time. A plan. Somewhere safe. Then it hit me. Uncle Roy. He lived out past the county line, on a chunk of land no one cared about. No neighbors. No cops. Just space and quiet. He wouldn't ask questions. Wouldn't judge. And most importantly, he wouldn't let anyone take Emily from me. I took a sharp turn onto the backroads, tires skidding against gravel. Emily whimpered, still crying, but I squeezed her hand. Shoo, baby, it's okay, I murmured. I've got you. I won't let them take you. She sniffled, her big, teary eyes looking up at me. I don't want to go back to mommy. something inside me twisted. I had spent years believing Maddie was a good mother. Maybe a *****y wife, but a mother. I thought she loved Emily. But now? I didn't know who the hell she was. I won't let that happen, I promised. The road stretched out before me, dark and endless, but my gut was tight with dread. I had gotten away, but Maddie wasn't the type to let things go. And I had just declared war. The cabin came into view an hour later, hidden deep in the woods. The porch light flickered dimly, and an old pickup sat in the driveway, rusted but reliable. I killed the engine and stepped out, scanning the trees. Silence. Nothing but the chirp of crickets and the rustling of leaves. Good. I scooped Emily into my arms, carrying her up the steps. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Roy stood there, all 6'4" of him, gray beard thick, eyes sharp as ever. He took one look at me, disheveled, blood-streaked, Emily clinging to my chest, and exhaled. Jesus Christ, boy. What the hell happened? Can we come in? I asked. He stepped aside without another word. I walked inside, the warmth of the cabin wrapping around me. The place smelled like old wood and pipe smoke, just like I remembered. I set Emily down on the couch, brushing her hair back. Roy watched me carefully, his arms crossed. Talk. So I did. I told him everything, sparing no detail. The affair. The betrayal. The paternity test. The docs. The gunshot. Maddie's threats. By the time I finished, Roy was silent, staring into the fire crackling in the hearth. Then he sighed, rubbing his jaw. Damn mess, boy. I nodded. I need to keep her safe, Roy. His eyes flicked to Emily, then back to me. You willing to do what it takes? I hesitated. What do you mean? Roy leaned forward, his voice dropping. You can't just run. She'll chase you. She'll get the law on you, twist the story. Hell, she might even use that bastard Jake to come after you himself. I already knew all of that. Then what's the alternative? Roy studied me. You fight back. A heavy silence settled between us. Emily sniffled, curling into a ball on the couch. I swallowed hard. How? Roy stood up, grabbing his coat. Come outside. The night was colder than before, the trees whispering in the wind. Roy led me to the old barn, his boots crunching against the dirt. He yanked the door open, revealing the same workbench I used to mess around with as a kid. But now, it wasn't filled with rusty tools and spare parts. It was filled with weapons. Shotguns. Rifles. Knives. A whole damn arsenal. I stared. What the hell, Roy? He shrugged. Prepper, remember? I had forgotten. My uncle had always been the paranoid type. Always muttering about being ready for the worst. I used to think he was crazy. Now, I wasn't so sure. He grabbed a shotgun off the rack, checked the barrel, then handed it to me. You want to keep her safe? You stop running. You end this. I exhaled, gripping the shotgun tight. The weight felt good. Solid. Roy clapped a hand on my shoulder. Tomorrow, we get you ready. I nodded. Because deep down, I knew, this wasn't over. Maddie and Jake weren't just going to let us go. And the next time they came for us, I wasn't running. I was going to finish it. The morning came too fast. Emily was still asleep, curled up under an old wool blanket on Roy's couch, her tiny fingers clutching the fabric like it was a lifeline. I stood over her for a long time, just watching, trying to absorb the reality of everything. She wasn't mine. Not by blood. But she was mine in every other way that mattered. And if Maddie and Jake thought they could take her from me, they were dead ******ing wrong. Roy was already outside when I stepped onto the porch, standing by his rusted old truck, a cigarette between his lips. He glanced at me, exhaling smoke. "You sleep?" I shook my head. "No time for that." He grunted, nodding toward the barn. "Come on, then." Inside, the smell of oil and dust filled the air. The weapons from last night were still laid out, neat and orderly. Roy walked over to the table, picked up a handgun, and tossed it to me. I caught it, checked the chamber out of instinct. "Loaded." He smirked. "Guess you remember some things." I ignored him, my jaw tight. "What's the plan?" Roy pulled a chair out and sat down, stretching his legs. "You wanna end this, you can't wait for them to come to you. You need to hit first. Hard." My grip tightened on the gun. "You want me to kill them?" Roy shrugged. "I want you to make sure they never come after you again." I stared at him. He wasn't joking. He wasn't exaggerating. He was dead serious. And the worst part? I wasn't against it. For the first time in my life, I understood why men did the things they did. Why they broke. Why they snapped. When someone took everything from you, when they spat on the years you gave, the love you poured out, the sacrifices you made, there were only two options. Die on your knees. Or stand up and fight. I checked the safety on the gun and slid it into my waistband. "Where do we start?" Roy smirked. The sun was sinking by the time I rolled into town, Roy's truck rumbling beneath me. My heart was steady. My mind was clear. This was it. No more running. No more waiting for Maddie and Jake to make the next move. This time, I was going to decide how this ended. I parked a block away from Jake's apartment, cutting the engine. The place was a ****hole, peeling paint, broken blinds in the windows, a busted street lamp flickering overhead. I watched the building, waiting. And then I saw her. Maddie. She stepped out of her car like she owned the whole damn world, phone pressed to her ear, smirking at something. She looked carefree. Like she hadn't just tried to rip my life apart. Like she wasn't *********** monster. I clenched my fists, forcing my breathing to stay even. Not yet. She disappeared inside. I moved. The door was unlocked. Careless. Arrogant. I stepped inside, my footsteps silent against the worn-out carpet. The air smelled like cigarette smoke and cheap liquor. I could hear them in the living room. Talking. Laughing. Jake's voice. That idiot actually ran? Maddie's laughter. Of course he did. He's ********************** coward. Always has been. My fingers twitched. Jake chuckled. And you're sure he won't come back? A pause. Then Maddie's voice, dripping with amusement. Even if he does, it won't matter. He's already lost everything. And if he tries to fight, she let out a low chuckle. We'll bury him. That was it. That was the moment I stopped giving a damn. I stepped into the doorway. They both froze. Maddie's eyes widened, her phone slipping from her fingers. Jake flinched, reaching for something, probably a weapon, but I already had my gun out, aimed right at him. Don't. He stopped. Maddie recovered first, her lips curling into a smirk. Well, well. Look who finally grew a backbone. I ignored her, locking eyes with Jake. You took everything from me. He tilted his head. No. I just took what was never yours to begin with. My vision went red. Before I knew what I was doing, I stepped forward and slammed the gun into his face. He stumbled back, clutching his nose as blood gushed between his fingers. Maddie screamed. I grabbed Jake by the collar and shoved him against the wall, pressing the barrel of the gun right up against his groin. His breath hitched. "Are you ready to pay for what you did?" I growled, my voice low, dangerous. "For destroying my life? For nearly killing my daughter?" He smirked, even through the pain. And then he said it. "Your wife was insanely good in bed, your life was worthless anyway, and your daughter, she's actually mine." His eyes gleamed. "And only I decide what happens to her." A gunshot rang out. I didn't think, I just acted. Jake's body hit the floor, writhing in agony. Maddie screamed, scrambling backward, her eyes wide with horror. I turned to her, gun still in my hand, my breathing heavy. Her lips trembled. You shot him." I stepped closer. "You're damn right I did." She swallowed hard, pressing herself against the wall. You won't get away with this." I tilted my head. "Won't I?" Silence. Then, tires screeched outside. I stiffened. Maddie's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You didn't think I wouldn't have backup, did you?" I cursed under my breath, moving fast. Jake was still moaning on the ground, bleeding out. Maddie was laughing, her eyes wild. Headlights flooded the apartment as more cars pulled up. I had walked into a trap. I glanced at the window. Too far to jump. The back door? Maybe. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Not yet. The roar of engines outside sent a jolt of adrenaline through my veins. My mind was a battlefield, thoughts clashing, instinct screaming. Maddie was grinning like a snake, Jake groaning in a pool of his own blood, and outside, who the hell knew how many were coming? I had seconds. Maddie licked her lips, her voice dripping with venom. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Thought you were in control?" I kept my gun trained on her, stepping back, my ears tuned to the movement outside. Heavy boots. Doors slamming. Low voices. Too many. I had walked into this thinking I was the hunter. But I was the prey. I moved. Fast. Gunshots shattered the front window as I ducked into the hallway, heart hammering. Plaster exploded beside me. Maddie was laughing, as she scrambled out of the way. "Kill him," she shrieked. A shadow moved in the doorway. I fired first. The guy grunted, staggered back, clutching his shoulder. More movement. More bodies pushing inside. *T. I sprinted down the hall, kicked open the back door. Cold air slapped me in the face. The alley stretched out ahead, dark and empty. I bolted, boots pounding against the pavement. Behind me, shouts. More gunfire. A bullet whizzed past my ear. I ducked behind a dumpster, breathing hard. My heart was a war drum in my chest. This wasn't just about Maddie anymore. She had people. Connections. This was bigger than a cheating wife and a bastard lover. This was something else. And I had no idea how deep it went. But I did know one thing. I needed to get back to Emily. Now. I took a breath, steadied myself. Footsteps crunched closer. A shadow loomed. I gripped my gun tighter. Waited. The second he turned the corner, I struck. A quick shot to the knee, he screamed, collapsing. I didn't wait for him to recover. I ran. The streets blurred past me. My truck was blocks away, but I knew I'd never make it before they caught up. I needed another way out. Then I spotted it, a motorcycle parked outside a bar, keys still in the ignition. Some drunk idiot must have been too confident. Too bad for him. I jumped on, fired the engine, and tore off into the night. The drive back to Roy's felt like an eternity. My hands were shaking. My thoughts spiraled. Maddie's words, Jake's smirk, the gunfire, the blood. It replayed over and over like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But none of it mattered. Only one thing did. Emily. The cabin came into view, dark and still. Too still. Something was wrong. I killed the engine, listening. No movement. No lights. My stomach twisted. I drew my gun and stepped forward. Slowly. Carefully. The front door was ajar. No. I pushed inside, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. The air felt wrong. Tense. Then I saw it. The overturned chair. The shattered glass on the floor. The smell of cigarette smoke still lingering. And the note. One piece of paper, taped to the wall. You should have stayed gone. Now she's mine for real. No name. No signature. But I knew exactly who wrote it. Maddie. The rage came like a hurricane, crashing through me with a force I couldn't contain. My hands clenched into fists, my breath ragged. They had her. They had Emily. And now? Now, I was going to burn their whole ing world down. Roy's truck wasn't fast, but it was built like a damn tank. And that was exactly what I needed. I drove with one thing in mind, finding Maddie. Finding Jake. And making them regret ever breathing. They thought they could take her. They thought they could win. They had no ing idea what was coming. I knew where they'd go. Not the apartment, too obvious. No, Maddie was smart. She'd go somewhere she felt untouchable. Somewhere no one could hear her scream when I got there. The old lake house. Her family owned it. A place out in the woods, miles from town. Isolated. Secluded. Perfect for a final stand. I floored it. The road was dark, the trees closing in on both sides. The old gravel path leading to the house was overgrown, but I knew it by heart. As the house came into view, my grip tightened on the wheel. 2 cars parked out front. Lights on inside. They were here. And so was Emily. I killed the headlights, rolling to a stop 100 yards out. Silence. The night was thick, the trees swaying. I stepped out, gun drawn. No time for hesitation. No time for fear. I moved like a ghost, staying low, sticking to the shadows. The front door was unlocked. I pushed inside. Voices. Maddie. Jake. Someone else. And then, Emily. Crying. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening on the gun. Then I stepped into the light. They froze. Jake, bandaged but standing, his eyes going wide. Maddie, looking like a queen on her throne. And another man, bigger, meaner, with a scar across his cheek. And in the middle of them, Emily. Her little face streaked with tears, arms tied, lips trembling. Maddie smirked. You never learn, do you? I didn't hesitate. I raised my gun. And pulled the trigger. The bullet hit Jake dead in the chest. His body jerked backward, crashing into a table before slumping to the floor. His mouth opened, but no words came. Just a wet, gurgling sound as blood soaked his shirt. His hands trembled, grasping at nothing. Then he was still. Maddie screamed. The scarred man lunged at me, but I was ready. One shot to the knee sent him crashing down, howling in pain. I kicked the gun from his hand, grabbed him by the collar, and smashed my fist into his face. Once. Twice. 3 times. His nose broke with a sickening crack, blood splattering across my knuckles. I turned to Maddie. Her eyes were wild, her breath ragged. You killed him." I stepped closer. "You're damn right I did." She stumbled back, shaking her head. "You won't get away with this." I glanced down at Jake's body, then at the scarred man groaning on the floor. "Looks like I already have." Then I turned to Emily. She was still tied to the chair, her little body trembling, her eyes huge and filled with terror. I crouched in front of her, my heart pounding. "Hey, baby girl," I whispered. "It's okay. I'm here." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Daddy?" I smiled, even though my hands were still shaking. "Yeah, sweetheart. Daddy's here." She launched herself into my arms the second I untied her, clinging to me like she'd never let go. And I held her just as tight, pressing my lips against her hair, breathing her in. She was safe. For now. I turned back to Maddie, still standing there, hands clenched, shaking with fury. "You think this is over?" she spat. "You think you can just take her and walk away?" I stood, holding Emily close. "You don't get a say in this anymore, Maddie." Her lips curled. "She's not even yours." Something in me snapped. I crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbed her by the throat, and slammed her against the wall. Her eyes went wide, hands clawing at my wrist. "You listen to me, and you listen good," I growled. "I don't give a damn whose blood runs in her veins. She's mine. She always was. And you?" I tightened my grip just enough to watch the panic flicker in her eyes. "You are nothing to her now." I let go, and she collapsed, gasping for air. I turned away. The scarred man groaned, trying to crawl toward his gun. I kicked it away and aimed my own weapon at his head. "Don't." He froze. I took Emily and walked out. Maddie's screams followed us, filled with rage, hate, desperation. I didn't look back. The next few days passed in a blur. Roy helped us disappear. New IDs. A new city. A fresh start. I didn't ask how he arranged it. I didn't care. All that mattered was Emily. We found a quiet town by the coast, far from everything. A small house with a porch swing and a backyard big enough for a little girl to run free. For the first time in forever, things felt right. But at night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit by the window, gun in my lap, waiting. Because I knew Maddie. She wouldn't stop. Not until one of us was dead. And if she ever came for us again, I'd be ready.